This is Matt from LaserBear, and today I'm going to show you how to make the Chatterbox. The Chatterbox comes in a variety of different sizes. I'm using some plywood here, and also I'm using the kerf adjusted design so I can have a snug fit. And here I'm using acrylic for my teeth to make them extra shiny. After everything was cut, I gave everything a quick sanding to make it a little smoother for the spray paint I will use later. To glue my pieces together, I will be using Gorilla Glue. To start the assembly, you can put glue on the upper part of the mouth. You'll see here in the video I add glue to the bottom part. I do not recommend doing that because it took me a little while to finish spreading the glue around on the top part. So don't do this, that's shown in the video. That was a mistake that I later figured out. But here I'm using a brush to move the glue around and to evenly spread it on the piece. Now simply take the other part and add it to the top. The biggest concern I had when gluing these was getting too much glue into the spaces where you would insert the teeth. I didn't want the glue to get in the way when I inserted the tooth and it wouldn't fit properly. Once I got everything in place, I used clamps because I am using wood glue, and wood glue requires pressure for it really to set and to kind of get into all the cracks. Feel free to use another method of glue. Wood glue is a bit messy. You can see me here. I have to use a toothpick to kind of clean everything out. But I really enjoyed the flexibility wood glue gives me so I can move the part around before it fully dries and it doesn't get stuck right away. Now I'm going to start to spread around the glue on the bottom piece. The wood glue didn't fully dry, so I could still move it around, but I could definitely see it started to get a little tacky. But it's just the same thing as the top. I'm going to use some wood clamps, make sure I get the glue evenly spread throughout and add some pressure so we get a nice bond. Now we let that dry and we'll move on to the next part. Next I'll be gluing the back part of the jaw to the top and bottom part of the jaw. Here I'm using a little applicator I found on Amazon with the same wood glue that I used earlier. I like to put little dots for the wood glue so it doesn't get smushed out too much and make too much of a mess, but it's pretty easy to clean up. I add glue to both sides of the piece before I put them together. I find this way that the glue can get evenly spread throughout both sections, but there's a bunch of different ways to glue. You do it how you want to do. This is just my approach. Since I'm using the kerf adjusted designs, I get a nice fit and the glue really just fits in there and it's a great bond. Now we clamp and let dry, and we assemble the bottom part of the jaw with the back piece attaching to this part of the mouth. Exact same method, exact same thing. Since I will be spray painting my piece, I'm going to use Mod Podge to paint the edges so that way that the plywood doesn't absorb the spray paint and it all kind of sticks inside of the wood and leaves the burnt edge. I'm trying to cover up the burnt edge by painting the pieces on the edges. This acts as a really nice barrier so the spray paint will stick to the covered edge and not just soak into the wood, which gives it a much fuller look. It didn't come out perfect. This is the first time I've done it, but I was pretty happy with the results overall. It takes extra time, but it was well worth the effort. Here you can see this is even the pin for the hinge part, so I put a little bit on the pin for the hinge part. You only really need to do it on the parts that will be shown. The hinge is by far kind of the tedious part to do this on. Now I'm going to use the same method to do that on the jaw. I'm going to put it across all the parts on the bottom, and I'm going to put it across the front until it's all covered, and then I'm going to let it dry. fully dry, this is what it looks like. This gives us a really nice surface to spray paint and provides a much better look if you just didn't put anything on there at all. This is the spray paint that I'll be using. It's Rust-Oleum. Turned out really great. So one hiccup I discovered was that the spray paint that I used made the hinge sticky. So here I'm sanding down the parts of the hinge that will be rubbing against each other so it'll be nice and smooth. Once I sanded down those pieces, it is now time to assemble the hinge. The hinge is made up of parts that do not move in this peg, so that's the outer part there, and then the circular part that goes above it, and then it alternates. So this is a part of the hinge that does not move, and then the next part, which is right here, is the circular part, and then the final part is the square peg hinge that does not move. Once the hinge is put together, we now need to attach it to the jaw. This is the upper part of the jaw. Just as before, I add glue to both pieces with my little applicator. This makes it really easy to kind of get it in there. It's much better than a brush or trying to use the bottle. Now be careful when you're installing the hinge. If you've never done this before, you don't want to get glue in between the pieces, so don't over glue it. If you get glue in between the hinge parts and they don't rotate, it won't work. Now we simply insert the pieces together nice and snug. If it's a little tight, just force it in there. Again, I'm using the Kerf adjusted design, so my fit is very tight, but it does go in there fairly easily, and a little bit of glue's going to be sticking out, but we'll take care of that with another toothpick and a little bit of cleanup. So after you get this all cleaned up, it's important to kind of let it dry, because we're going to assemble the other part of the jaw, and when you put them together, you don't want the last part to move too much. But it's the same process as before. We're going to add glue to this part, then we're going to go to our other part that is now attached to the bottom piece, and we're just going to add some glue and stick it together. Again, this is why it's important to let the other piece dry, because you're going to be kind of mashing them together, and you don't want that bottom part to be slipping out while you're trying to fiddle this piece in. Once they're together, just go in and you can clean it up. Be careful when you fully open it. If there's glue on the back, you don't want to glue those back pieces together, but you can clean it up, let it dry, and then you'll be ready to add your teeth. For the teeth, I will be using a clear Gorilla Glue, since we're going to be putting acrylic pieces together with wood. This is a pretty good option that I found worked well for my piece. One quick note is that when you cut out your teeth, if you leave them in the order that they're cut out in, it'll help you assemble them. They're assembled in upward and downward facing directions, and you can move from left to right around the teeth or around the jaw to put it together. This was by far one of the more challenging parts of the project. I didn't really know how much glue to use, so one thing that I learned is that probably less is more in this. I was concerned about the teeth falling out, but what kind of happened was I used a lot of glue and it would squirt out. It would ooze out of the sides, and I would try to clean it up, and then some of it would get on the teeth, and the acrylic kind of show everything. So here's a variety of different approaches and me putting the teeth together. It was a little bit of a difficult process, but I also was trying to not make a mess. But once you get the hang of things, you go around the circle, kind of do one jaw at a time, and then you can move over to the other jaw and add those teeth. The difference between the bottom jaw and the top jaw is that the bottom jaw has in the front 4 small teeth, and then the top jaw has 2 big front teeth. So that was about it for the teeth. You can see me here just kind of wiggling in them and getting them into place. They fit pretty well. The glue worked okay. There might be better methods, but I was happy with the results. And there it is. The Chatterbox is complete. I hope yours turned out great. I would love to see it. Please join us on our Facebook group, like our YouTube channel, and thank you so much for checking out this project.